Welcome to the Vision Profiles podcast. Join us, two dedicated Apple Vision Pro users, as we dive into everything from hardware and software to apps and the latest updates in the world of Apple Vision Pro. I'm Marty Gensius. I happen to be a faculty member at Kent State University, a podcaster, and really an avid Apple product fan.
And I'm Eric Bolden. I work in IT, but my interest is in finding ways to share content, currently photography of plants and birds.
And with us tonight, we have a guest, Dan Wassink, who he doesn't know this, but I've been stalking him for years. He has a wonderful service, Dan's Tutorials, and just amazed at the amount of work that you put out, Dan. And we'll have an opportunity to talk about Dan's Tutorials and the other stuff that you do. Ask Me Anything and the whole kind of services that you provide for members of your group. And I know him as really knowing a lot of information about all things Apple. But most recently, we wound up showing up into a couple of Mac user groups wearing our headsets and just having fun as they came out. So I know Dan has done some interesting things with that and exploring some interesting stuff. So Dan, why don't you introduce yourself?
Sure. Well, thanks for having me. Not only am I an early adopter for Apple Vision Pro, as you mentioned, but I would say tech in general. Always been just fascinated by tech and where it is taking us. As you mentioned, on a popular tutorial website, Dan's Tutorials, where I create what I consider easy to follow videos on how to use primarily it's Apple software, and but I do go outside of that a little bit. It's always not Apple. It's sometimes I have third-party software on there as well. I've been delving into a little bit more software that I think would help other people. So yeah, but it's just always been a joy of mine, just experimenting with technology and seeing where I can take it and things like that. So,
my habit is to support people who do that. I mean, a lot of people want the free stuff, but when I see creatives like you putting together material, it's like, we need to support this guy in continuing his work. So, I joined and I'd say I'm a user. I'm not necessarily an avid user, but you keep putting great stuff out. And even your daily reviews of that I get in the email of what's out there has been great. So, and this might be Eric's first introduction to your service. So why don't you, while we're on it, why don't you talk a little bit about what you do with that?
Well, primarily, I started out, I'll just give a real brief history, started out at Apple as a genius. Actually, I have about 20 years in publishing over before that. And then I started developing apps. And the apps, I threw a couple ideas out there, travel apps and tutorials, and the tutorials kind of stuck. I was one of the first apps that was put out on the Mac App Store, and did that for several years. And then Apple, in their infinite wisdom, decided that they didn't want to have any tutorials, tips and tutorials on their software and hardware. So it got more and more difficult to get the apps approved. So I decided to just go out online, and that was probably about a decade ago that I did that. And so now I just have a membership site, and it is Dan's Tutorials, not Dance Tutorials. When you type it in Google, it comes out as Dance, and you don't want to see me dancing. It's a good thing there's not video here. Yeah, it's Dan's Tutorials, and I just create all these different tutorials. And, I sometimes there'll be some little tips here and there. And today I just recorded a full-blown video. It's about an hour long, which means I have to edit it down quite a bit. But it's, numbers for beginners, and I want to get into more of the tutorial side of it. Numbers for the Mac, numbers for iPad, numbers for the iPhone, pages for the Mac, pages, get back into doing a little bit more of that. So you can find them on YouTube, and those, of course, are advertiser supported. But if you go over to my site, you get all the videos ad-free, of course, and I have an AI assistant on there. I love AI. It saves hours a day, and at least from what I'm doing. So I created an AI assistant that is modeled after an Apple genius, and I think it does a pretty good job. It's perfect, but me being a former Apple genius, I'm going to say we're not perfect either. So it kind of fits right in with the form of Apple geniuses. And then, as you mentioned, I host webinars, Ask Me Anythings, and classes on a regular basis as well. And that's all over at my site, Dan's Tutorials. So that's pretty much my
Awesome.
elevator pitch right there.
Well, and I think listeners should check it out in terms of for me, it's sort of a one-stop shopping service where once you're a member, you can go in and you can find a lot of good material in there. I'm curious about the numbers piece because I was self-taught on Excel, which means I'm not very good at Excel, but trying to make the shift to numbers would be another shift for me. Eric, any comments?
Yeah. And
Oh, yes. I hadn't heard of you before. I was just perusing it. I was like, yeah, got a couple things that would help with. So yeah, after the show, I'll sign up and take a look around. I'm looking forward to it.
if you have any questions, let me know. I go study out there. So,
Hey, let's take a look at the news for Apple Vision Pro. There was an article that came out on PC Tablet, which I thought was interesting, and it came out about maybe a week ago, and it's a good overview for those. And I'll have the link in the podcast notes for folks to look at. But it talks about how the Vision Pro. It's one of those articles, very few, that has a positive spin on what the Vision Pro could be doing for creatives and gives a nice review of some of the things that are already happening in different areas like surgery and training. And you'll hear some of those articles on this podcast. Any reaction to that? That was actually an article that came from India, which is interesting. It's a PC tablet article in India.
I read that, and I pretty much agree with it, a lot of what it's saying. And to me, the Apple Vision Pro, we're just touching the surface of what it's going to do. And I think we look at from a consumer standpoint of entertainment, because that's what we're used to with Quest and all that. But I think we're going to see a lot more businesses use it. Like you said, the surgery and, remodeling homes and the nuclear. You posted an article about,
training
for nuclear. Yeah, because then they don't have to take the risk. A $3,000 headset is probably a lot lower risk than, sending someone into a facility. So I think we're going to see it's almost like it's going to be different than what we anticipated, which is awesome. It's just going to be much more broad. So, and I think that article kind of said along the same lines.
Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken.
The other article, another article comes from the Apple newsroom, and buried in this article about the new accessibility features that are coming out with the latest iOS and Vision OS is a little section in there about what's happening with Vision OS. And one of the accessibility features that's really pretty cool is, and I was running the betas and then I pulled back on my Vision and now are just running the standard upgrades. I think it's available in the beta, or the developer beta, I should say. And I'm tempted to try and load that back on there, although it was difficult for me to do it when I tried it before. But one of the really cool things is the ability for the input system to take words and translate them into text. So imagine someone using this headset who has some hearing issues going on with them. Somebody can have a conversation with them in real time with that coming out in a text format for them. Really pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the article is also talking about lighting adjustments and reducing flashing lights. I also noticed even in the current version of Vision OS, you can switch it to grayscale. But if you're presenting, the presenting screen is in color, which just a nice touch.
So some interesting things coming out. Yeah, Dan?
I love where Apple goes with this accessibility, of course, on all their devices. The Vision Pro is just, I think there's a lot of room for them to go into that arena. So it's nice to see them actively, going into this, even with the betas. We're going to add this, and we can tell that it is a 1.0 system because every beta, it seems like they're adding just a couple more accessibility options. But, it's great that they're doing that.
The rest of the article that I post has some very cool stuff in it in terms of accessibility, like having eye tracking and being able to interact with like an iPad via eye tracking. And I think that technology that we're comfortable with or that we use every time we go into Vision Pro is now kind of being pushed over onto but for potential uses in other products. And so when I read the part about eye tracking, I'm like, man, that came directly from my experience of setting up, the Vision Pro, and anybody's experience of setting it up. Dan, you shared with us a older article, and tell us a little bit about that.
Well, it's an article that was written by an executive that used to work for Oculus. And he's just kind of looking at the Apple Vision Pro. It came out he wrote it after the Apple Vision Pro came out, so it's not that old, of course. But basically what he does is he discusses the Apple Vision Pro as an over-engineered dev kit. And when I read this, it kind of made sense. What he means by that is Apple added, and too much hardware to it because they couldn't have it fail. They need to embrace all of the developers. So if they had hardware in there that could fail, the news would get out there. So I guess this is what a developer kit does. It's over-engineered, and get all of everybody behind it. And the next model will be what is for the consumer. This is what he goes, this is what we would have done at Oculus if we could. They just didn't have the money, even though it's Facebook, they didn't have the money behind them that Apple does. So this is what they wish they could have done over at Oculus, is build this dev kit device to get all the developers on board. And then the next generation will just be that much smaller and lighter because they don't have to do all that. They don't have to over-engineer it and all that. And, they'll just learn that much more. So anyway, it was pretty interesting. He, talks about the pros, excellent distortion correction, high resolution displays, which we all know, integration into the existing ecosystem, Apple ecosystem, but, it has its cons too. Heavyweight. The field of vision is pretty narrow compared to like an Oculus. But, all that stuff can be overcome. A lot of the cons can be overcome. So I just found it very, very fascinating. And from that side of it, like being a developer kit, embracing, getting the developers involved is just an interesting perspective.
I never thought about the fact that you're over-engineering it so everybody can get on, all the developers can get on board with it. It's an interesting take and a really interesting
And I don't know if
article.
it's true or not, but that's what I thought too. I mean, it made sense when I read it, but I am not a developer in that scheme of things. So it was interesting.
I like that whole section as well. I noticed this article also comments a little bit on how long can you wear it and comfort levels, and that seems to show up in a good percentage of articles about the Apple Vision Pro, where I think an adjustment was needed, and they evidently didn't get it, because there definitely are people that can wear it for longer than 30 to 45 minutes without having pain in the face. I've noticed Apple has a better measuring kit that they're looking at for corporate users and education, so that you can have people try out the software and get all of the settings to be able to order more than one unit. That I found kind of interesting, as well as being able to go into an Apple Store and then we've talked a bit about this before, readjust the fit, exchange parts and components to try and get a better fit. But yes, it was an interesting article.
I'm one of those
and I've done the same, by the way. Ordered new parts to make it more comfortable.
Yeah, I'm one of those freaks who can wear anything until the battery runs out. And so the gang that I hang out with, and Eric's definitely one of them, have got me turned into watching Monarch. So I watched the whole first season of Monarch, and then it's like, now wait a minute, this connects the MonsterVerse. let me get it. And they had the movies, all the MonsterVerse movies on sale in a package. So I bought them. And now I'm like every night taking 2 hours and getting through a complete movie in the MonsterVerse. So yeah, I'm one of those folks who can tolerate a lot of pain. My dentist told me that one time when I was in the chair, he couldn't figure it out. So it hasn't been a problem for me with the headset and the adjustments. It does have its
And I would
benefits.
I would go the same thing with me. I mean, I even wear just the smaller headband, the one that just goes behind you. I don't have to wear the one that, and it's just a matter of, like you said, go to the store and get it refit. And I had new inserts in there and rested on your cheek a little bit. I think there's just an art to wearing it properly, and if people don't do that, it's they're going to get a bad experience. So
And
take a little bit of time and readjust things.
No, I fully agree. And on that single band, like a couple millimeters up on the back of your head or down on the back of the head really changes where the pressure goes.
I was doing the single band.
I put it up just a little bit.
Yeah, I was doing the single band and then switched to the double band. And then just a couple of nights ago, switched back to the single band. And I don't know why, other than I was tired of using the double band and wanted to see if I could return to the single band, which never really created problems for me. I just thought I'd go with the double band for a while. Also in the news, a lot of stuff about international rollout. And for the last week or so, we've been hearing how Mac Rumors came out with an article saying how this is going to be debuted in a bunch of countries. And it doesn't, they said Canada, Australia, Canada, China, France, Germany, Japan, Singapore, South Korea, and the UK. And I think there was a lot of burst of, plus, they were bringing people in for all that training from those different countries. So it seemed like it made sense. But then today, Mark Gurman comes out with an article and says, Canada and the UK, they're going to get the next rollout of the device. So those folks in the other countries probably are having a sad day. If Gurman's correct.
I will say, yeah. And I'd say it's a little disappointing because I am waiting for the killer app yet, and that is a flight simulator. I want, that's what I want is a flight simulator. I know you can do it through hacks, getting Microsoft's on there, but I'm not going to do that yet. But the key to making that work, though, is you have to get the developers from other countries, because a lot of the apps that we get on a daily basis or that we see on a daily basis are not developed here in the United States. And I got that from I was on a Zoom meeting with Jason Snell, and I asked that question alone because he has a lot of contacts, and he's like, there are a lot of other developers outside of the United States just waiting. They can't even get their hands on one, so they're not going to develop anything for it. So once they get their hands on it, it's going to kind of open up the floodgates. At least that's kind of the hope or the thought. Open up the floodgates for some of these killer apps that we all want to see. So waiting for that day when they open it up to everybody, and that'll be a good thing.
If we mentioned in space before the show started, if you go in space, you will find all sorts of countries in there. And they have the headsets, and they got the headsets, and some of them I think are developers. And it's just interesting. They get it some way or somehow. Another article on this was a personal choice. This came from iMore and also donaninhaber.com, which is a Turkish tech site, that it was reported that in the Turkish airport, which I've been through many, many times, they have lots of shops in there. There was a shop that was selling Apple Vision Pro headset, and apparently the owner of it was sort of considered an Apple reseller shop. But how did he get the headsets? Well, he probably ordered them, brought them in, and was selling them for the equivalent of $5,100 US dollars. And I think it was the base model. And I don't know how much success he had selling them, but this was kind of big news in Turkey. And then I think iMore picked up the article and wrote it, or maybe it was the other way around. But I found it in the same article, essentially in two sources. So for those developers out there, just fly through the Istanbul International Airport and you can pick one up. Ataturk Airport. So hopefully more. I was excited about the original thoughts of all these different countries getting it released. And it looks, according to Garmin, that it's going to be just the UK and Canada. So we'll see.
You think it's just because they can't produce enough? A slow rollout?
Yeah, I'd like to say it's that. I mean, they some of the speculators over what they could produce and then said, look, it's not selling well because they didn't produce, they didn't sell 750,000. I read something in an article that said, the stores are only selling 1 or 2 per week. Well, on the average, the stores are selling 1 or 2 per week. There are 500 Apple retail stores. So if they're selling 1 or 2 per week, they're selling 1,000, or more. And so I didn't even get that. I mean, I did the math and I didn't quite figure, this isn't the flop that everybody wants it to be.
No, I think I equate it to the Apple Watch. Everyone thought that was a flop when it came out. And now you go around anywhere, you could see 10 people and I dare say 40% of them have an Apple Watch. It's amazing. Yeah. You don't even hear the Apple Watch from Apple's, the success story behind it, but there's a lot of people, at least where I live here, a lot of people that have Apple Watches. And I think this is going to follow that same path, the thing that I
sneaking. When I see when I get a glance at someone's wrist now, it's like, let's see what kind of watch they have on.
Yeah. Yep.
All right. Some stories about uses. And as Dan mentioned before, there's an article in Mac Daily News that was about Oberon Technologies used to create an application to train nuclear facility employees. And interesting that it's fallen into that venue. Another article from NDTV News, which is an India television station, that it's being used for bariatric surgery by doctors in bariatric surgery. And to me, it just makes sense. If I'm sitting in an operating room and folks, there are things all over the walls and information I have to get, I have to turn my head. I've got to ask somebody to pull it up. I've got that. Or I can wear the Vision Pro and just have all of those screens open of the information that I need to reference. So interesting. I think one of the general comments about this is anybody who's using one will, for industry purposes, will try and get the news out. And so in the large scheme of things, it's not that big. It's just that we hear these isolated situations where people are using it. I have a tendency to be a little more Pollyannish than that. Yeah.
I think it is pretty big, though. I mean, it could be just one surgeon using it, but just think of, the future, where that can take it, if and it's early stages of right now, you add 5 years to it, it's going to be incredible for doctors and other industries as well. So even these one bite offs thing are still very fascinating and just kind of a little bit of a glimpse of what we're going to see in the future, I believe.
Yeah, and there's a little bit of a time delay. Somebody does something and it's neat, and it takes a while to get through a couple conferences and some presentations, and then all of a sudden everybody says, "Yeah, this is a really neat idea," and then certifications and so I'm pretty optimistic.
I just am wondering.
Same here.
If when they get the bill on the hospital bill, is it charged for $3,500? That's all I want to know. If it's being passed on to the patient.
If it's been in my fair share of hospitals, I'm going to say they wouldn't charge you $3,500 for it. They'd upsell it somewhere.
So more, maybe the Turkish airport cost is what it is. Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, a couple of articles to end off is about, and you'll have to explain this. Patty Wagstaff stars in a recently released Apple Vision Pro app. You guys are both have aeronautical interest, and talk about that article, if you will.
I can't really say aeronautical interests. I just have a big fear of flying. But you can download an app that lets you basically be in an airplane while you know you're on the ground and watch it go through a bunch of stunts. And there's no way I'm ever going to experience that in person, but I can almost handle it virtually, where I can like hang on to the table and then hang on to my stomach so that I don't get sick. Yes, you spin around and you get to look at the scenery and the pilot's in the back talking about, oh, look at the view, look at the great weather, and we can see over here, and the planes rotating back and forth. It's a really nice experience, and I hadn't seen it anywhere else. The app is there. I highly recommend downloading it. It's a lot of fun.
I would agree. As an aviation enthusiast, one of my personal goals was always to be a pilot. I'm not going to anymore, but that was, I still love the idea of it. And that's why I'm waiting for that, flight simulator.
Yeah.
But this kind of gave me, a taste of what, it can be. Basically, what they did is they mounted a 360 camera in the front seat of the stunt plane. So you can see, as Eric said, you can see behind, you can see the pilot as she's speaking and all that. You can look up, you can look down, left or right, as she's flying and she's explaining what she's doing. So you're like a passenger in this. It's just a video, and but it's much more than a video because it's the 360 and all that. Very, very interesting, and I watched one of the movies. Now I think they have 4 of them on there, so I need to watch the rest of them as well. So
I that stuff would make me sick just watching it on a flat screen. I like flying. I like not being involved in the flying. I tried flight simulators, and you definitely do not want me as a pilot because I crash before takeoff. To me, that's gaming, and I don't have the digits in the head to figure that out. But I'm glad you guys are excited, and Eric, you get to have that experience. When you talk about that experience, Eric, I think about how VR has been used with like post-trauma military and in other sorts of situations, not just for training, but for fire, for explosions, where the old VR headsets were using that for that purpose. And those were pretty much programmed and pre-programmed for the experience. And I know working in that area that type of VR headset is helpful from a treatment standpoint in terms of working with PTSD when it's done right. So another article from a game developer, Alchemy, which I think they do some stuff with Meta, because looking at what they have here on the article, that looks real familiar. That's Meta apps, some of them which I think I've purchased. And it's a good article. It's an interview with some of the main people at Alchemy and talking about the potential for Apple Vision Pro and the ecosystem and platform that Apple Vision has. So if you're interested in gaming and a take on the game industry's view, or at least one company's view of Apple Vision Pro, you might take a look at this article. Again, we'll have links within the podcast notes for you to follow that. Any of this seem interesting or fascinating?
I found it fascinating in that they're excited about. They're talking about the hand tracking, controlling, and they're definitely, at least from their standpoint, they see this as something that they want to invest in. So I think it was a very, like you said, a very good article getting their perception of where this is going to go, and seemed to be pretty positive. So I'm excited about it.
Yeah. And I mean, I remember years ago when you could get specialized eye tracking hardware to be able to do user interface testing, and it would kind of look to see where you were looking at screens and touching stuff, and having all of that just in a headset so that people from all sorts of different industries can try things out. And it's really decent hardware, and it's got good feedback and hopefully even more APIs to be able to pull that information out. I'm sort of looking forward to WWDC coming up. It just seemed kind of interesting.
Yeah, some of the games in here I'm familiar with because I purchased them for my Meta 3. And so things like, what is it? They have it listed in the article. Job Simulator is a big Meta 3 game, and Vacation Simulator is the same sort of thing, where you're presented these environments and you manipulate them using your pointers or using the handheld devices that you use with Meta 3. So it'll be interesting to see if they can transfer that over to the Vision Pro piece and just use the hand gestures to be able to do it. I have been trying to use some apps like dart throwing and basketball and have not had the registration of my movements as clear. Still, I think there's still a lot of work to go that way. I don't know. Maybe other people are better virtual basketball players than I, but I really suck at it. So
yeah, I don't think it can't really judge how fast you're moving, so it can't do anything predictive. That's one advantage of some of the other tools is you're hanging on to something that can send more information back. It's not just looking. So it wouldn't surprise me if at some point there's some add-on that you can get specifically for games.
I haven't tried the basketball one, but I've done the chess one, and I feel, I can actually pick up the piece. I mean, I get that. Like, you don't have to. You can just look at it with the eye tracking and pinch. Yeah. But you just naturally go out there and pick up the piece, and I'm getting a pretty good handle on that. So it is, it's there. Just needs a tweaking,
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not moving quickly.
Yeah, I mean darts and like shooting with the gun. Using your index fingers to shoot with a gun just has not worked out well for me. But there's plenty of other things to do with the Apple Vision Pro. An article, and we'll put the link again about mirroring your view from your Apple Vision Pro to your iPad.
Oddly enough, this has come up a lot. And even going into some Apple stores where I've asked the question of just how do I do this? Because it wasn't working. The just normal out of the box with the Apple Vision, you can look, and if you've got an Apple TV, you can send to that. If you've got a computer, you can send to that. And as I've been asking people, it's like, I don't know, maybe it doesn't do it. But I think when you go in and do demos, they're using an iPad. So I figured there must be something. And it turns out that there's a setting change you have to make on the iPad. So in settings, general, AirPlay and handoff, there's a turn on an AirPlay receiver. And then that makes the iPad available for the Apple Vision Pro to send data to the iPad. Very convenient.
Is that on the iPhone as well then?
And it's on the iPhone as well. I haven't tried sending to the iPhone, but the setting is there.
Okay.
I'll tell you the thing that's I cannot get a handle on that is the persona, the shared persona. Now, Eric and I did this last week. InSpace had a group meeting where people could come in and they set you up to have that experience, and nobody could get it straight. Nobody, the directions were really unclear. People were saying, well, you have to open it in your Safari browser, and from your Safari browser, you accept and they were doing a FaceTime call, but not the whole thing with the shared spatial experience. Have you tried that, Dan? Have you had any, I'm not going to ask you how to do it, but just have you,
No, like I said, I've just had mixed experience with all of that, that whole thing of sharing and sharing with the iPad. It works, and then all of a sudden it drops. Just that kind of not real good luck yet, but I think that'll be improved over time.
Well, Eric and I will be your friend. Or friends.
Okay. If you want to try
maybe sometimes we'll try it out. But my point is it's really unclear how to do that. People were trying to do it from within the app. We know that doesn't work. People were trying it by messaging other folks. The FaceTime link. It was a mess. And I think 4 people.
How about through FaceTime through the app switcher or launcher? I think that's how it's supposed to work. So when it has applications, people, and then environments. And if you click on people, I think that's the angle you're supposed to go. Well, I don't know.
Yeah.
I haven't played with that side of it too much.
Sometimes, well, I'll try and track down what Apple says is the directions for that, and we'll give it a try again. Eric and I did it about a week ago and had success in doing it. I think got some places where we got stuck with it, but we sat down and watched a movie together, which was kind of fun.
That's neat.
Particularly in that dark cinema theater that you can do it as an environment once you get in that place. So interesting stuff we'll have posted on the site. Dan, tell us a little bit about your use of the Apple Vision Pro.
As I said, I'm a tech enthusiast. And I've always done this even with just general Mac, iPad, iPhone. I like to see what new apps are out there. And if one intrigues me, I download and just see what developers are doing. So primarily that's how I use it. I just look for intriguing apps and seeing how developers are using it, because it just fascinates me personally. And like you mentioned one, which is the guided guest mode. I haven't heard of that one, but to me, it's brilliant. If someone wants to, that's where Apple fails, and they don't have a help guide. It seems like So I love what people are doing. So that's primarily how I do it. I don't use it too much for entertainment. It's more or less just curiosity right now.
Any particular apps that you really enjoy?
It's a good question. I'm playing around a lot with. I have 360 cameras. I use Insta360. So I've been playing around a lot with that, creating 360 environments from places that I've been, and seeing how it all looks on that Apple Vision Pro. And in fact, I just had to upgrade one of my cameras because even though it was a 4K camera, put it on that Apple Vision Pro, it showed it really wasn't a 4K because it's 4K 360 degrees, not 4K typical. So I had to go and upgrade that. But I'd say the photography side of it is what I just find fascinating, kind of thing. It kind of brings me back to, we went to Puerto Vallarta, and I held out a selfie stick. Yes, I do have a selfie stick on the 360 camera outside of the balcony, and I can just overlook the resort that we're at, and I can see me standing, and I can also do video as well. I love that kind of thing about it. It kind of puts me into my own little world and not into a gaming world. I'm not too much of a gamer, but into my own, I can relive experiences, and that's what's really cool for me. So
there is an
panoramic images.
They're 360, so not only are they just 360 around, they're
but you get
all the way
too.
up, down. Yep.
Yeah, there is an app.
That's why I had to upgrade my Vision Pro in the beginning. Sorry, I had to upgrade. I got a 256 gigabyte, and I had to upgrade it to a 512 because those files are not the smallest in the world. So
there's an app called Share Spatial, and it's sort of like Google Globe, and there are pins all over the globe where people have contributed 360 images. I've done a few from my trips and figured I'm going to kind of donate that picture from Ireland and donate those pictures from Turkey and Northern California. And it's fun just to find those things and explore them. So, and it has a social aspect to it also. I remember some conversation we had about you using it for music, like a keyboard.
Yes, I have a keyboard, and I took piano lessons, 40, 45 years ago, 50 years ago. And
so when you were
still read notes and all that. yeah, sure. But I played around, again, exploring those apps, seeing where they can go. And there's one app, and I can't recall what the name of it is. If I send it, I'll put it in your notes so you can share it. But it's just interesting what they did is you look at the keyboard, and you have to tell where the bottom key is and the top key is. And then from that point on, it knows where the keys are, and then the notes just kind of fall. So then you know what you have to play by watching them fall. And I just thought that was very intriguing, because I'm seeing my keyboard, but yet I'm seeing this virtual stuff over top of it that's just kind of falling. So I just thought that was very, very intriguing. And that's what I love to see, is what developers are doing with it. Just fascinates me.
Well, there are some new apps worth mentioning. I'll put these in the notes. Also, Persona Chess and Persona Reversi, apparently games that you can play. You can do chess, but have your personas available. InSpace has a chessboard in your room that you can sit across from somebody and with their personas and play chess too. But this is a separate app. Then you mentioned the guided guest mode device demo app, which I stumbled across a couple of days ago and started playing around with it. And it opens up and there are a series of folders, and you can do a folder that will give you instructions on how to move things around in your environment. So instead of trying to explain it to someone who has the headset on, it's all there for them with the directions and an opportunity to practice that. It also has, you can add in whatever other kinds of experiences you want to put into that list of activities that teaches a new user how to use the environment. Craft is a new release on Apple Vision Pro. It is a journaling and document kind of environment that's very popular on the iPhone, very popular on Mac OS, and now it's in Vision OS. I was beta testing it, or got into the beta for about a week, and then they released it as a full app, and am trying to get the developers on one of these shows and had some communication back and forth with them. But Craft is one of those, I think, one of those major apps that moved over, and is not just an iPad app on Vision Pro, but it actually has Vision Pro components. It's been developed for that. So Museas, I guess, Museas, is a museum tour and trip kind of experience with museums. And Cell Wall Game is a game that's new and that's out, that's gotten a lot of good press. I tried to pick things, with the exception of Craft, that were only Vision Pro environment. So they were developed, the kinds of things that I mentioned here were developed for Vision Pro. But the last one I just had to put in there for Eric, because we said last show, when are they going to make a fart app for the Vision Pro? And he was totally disgusted by that idea. But they did release Flush Toilet Finder Pro, which is a iOS app. It's an iPad app, and it helps you locate the nearest public toilet. Why you would want to do that on a Vision Pro, I don't know, but those kind of decisions I like to keep to myself. So those are some new apps. We'll have links, including the Flush Toilet Finder Pro app, and hopefully someday when I go to the Flush Toilet Finder Pro app, they don't go endorsed by Vision Profiles. These are not endorsements, just interesting things we found. So Dan, Eric, you've got any final things you want to say?
I am just totally in love with the Vision Pro. Like I said, it's just fascinating to see where it's going. And I know it's first generation. I can't wait for version 2. Like Eric said, WWDC coming out. I'm sure we're going to see some interesting stuff in a few weeks. So just very exciting. And even though I don't use it on a daily basis, it is still something that just boggles my mind at the technology behind it. And it's impressive, very impressive.
Can I put you on the spot, Dan, and ask, is there anything in particular you'd like to see come out in Vision Pro 2.0, Vision OS 2.0?
I want to be able to rearrange my apps and put them into folders. And now, it's just alphabetical, and you have to swipe too far to get. I have a lot of apps on there because I try out a lot of apps. I would like to organize them by category. That is probably the biggest wish list, is let me organize my apps the way that I want to. Yeah. And I can't imagine that that's not coming, but that's my biggest wish list right there.
Yeah, and you think of the first
And of course,
generation
the flight
iPhone.
simulator.
The flight simulator.
Yeah. Yeah,
You think of the
exactly.
first-
That's what we're looking at. This is a first generation iPhone. We didn't have a lot with that, and
Yeah, we
now
didn't.
look where we are.
We didn't do folders. We couldn't do cut and paste. There was a
Mhm.
lot we couldn't do with that first
Mhm.
gen. So that's all good and fine. So Dan, final plug for your services. I hate to say plug because it sounds like we're forcing it on people. It is really good. You need to check it out. Go ahead, give it a shot.
Well, thank you, and the check's in the mail. No, it like you said, I've been doing this for a long time, and but it starting out as an Apogee for 3 years, and I cut a little bit. I was kind of making my own way there, and like I said, got into the apps, and the tutorials just kind of stuck. I apparently I have a little bit of a niche for it that makes it pretty easy to follow, and with me, it's always been the thing that I've done is the first thing I do when I download an app, and this could be 20, 30 years ago, back with Mac OS 9, Mac OS 8, I would go to the app's preferences and just, what can I do with this app? And I still do that to this day. I just love learning about that and seeing where they can go. And I have a little special knack, not to toot my own horn, I guess, but I have a special knack where I can translate that into pretty easy terms for people. At least that's what they tell me. So I'm going to go with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you're supporting a lot of Mac user groups. You're with the Naples group, and I see you in other groups, and it's always a pleasure to kind of connect with you in that environment with other
thank you.
folks.
And thank you for having me.
Yeah. So thanks for joining us, Eric. You cool for now?
I'm good.
All right. Well, thanks for tuning in. Our background music, Free Jazzy, is courtesy of Steve Combs from the Free Music Archive. We'd love to hear from our listeners. If you have ideas or want to join an episode, email us at visionprofilespodcast@gmail.com. Learn more about us and the Vision Profiles podcast at our website, visionprofiles.info, where you can also fill out or email us contact information if you're interested in participating in the show. Spread the word to other visionaries. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.